Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737-800 pilot and a member of PMDG's tech team. Today we are going to have a first look at the PMDG 737-800, and being a European, which other airline could I have chosen than Ryanair, being the largest 737-800 operator in the world and the largest 737 operator in Europe. So here it is on the apron at ZADA. And we are going to fly it all the way over to Dubrovnik, which is approximately a 1-hour flight. We're going to use this flight to have a look at a couple of the new features of the aircraft, and we're going to use this flight to see how the 737-800 actually flies. I can tell you there are some differences, and I'm going to go over those as we speak. Now, all of that said and done, let's have a quick look at the outside of the airplane. I'm not going to do a detailed walk around, because I'm sure that the vast majority of you have already seen my Qantas preview earlier today, and I did a detailed walk around over there. But what I'm going to show you today is just the length of this airplane. That is the very first thing that struck me after I've been flying the 600 on my stream for a long while. I got so accustomed to flying the 600 and to the length of the 600 that all of a sudden when I saw the 800 I was like, what's going on here? Is that really the 800? The airplane that I'm flying every day? And yes, it is. One more thing I would like to mention straight away at the beginning of the stream. You can see the scenery is not looking quite as good. That is because Microsoft does have some issues with the servers, and using any kind of live services, be it terrain, weather, multiplayer, etc., is going to cause crashes to desktop. That's why I decided this stream is about the 800, so let's focus on the airplane, and I'm just going to turn the online services off to prevent us from crashing to desktop. Another word on that while we're talking is that many of you know my video on GSX, and it seems like GSX is actually not the cause for the crashes to desktop, so I will be using GSX on today's stream, but, and here's the but, what we have to say is GSX still got its other issues. So every of those bugs that I have shown on my GSX video is still valid with the exception of the crashes to desktop. So what I'm going to use GSX for is Pushback, Follow Me, and Marshalling on stand, and that's going to be it. Anyway, I'll have a more detailed video up on the term of GSX later today, so that's going to be there anyway around the evening, where I actually have a special guest on the channel, but I'm not going to talk about it too much quite yet. So, back to the 737-800. We know our lovely airplane, and I have to say PMDG did a significant job modeling it. Pretty much everything is exactly where I would expect it to be, and you notice some minor detail up here on the registration, so thank you very much for PMDG. They actually dedicated this very airframe to me, and it is a real-life registration. Alright, that much for the thank you. So, let's head over into the flight deck, and let's have a look at some of the stuff that is new in our airplane. So, I'm sure many of you have seen the previews. If not, you guys surely know this one by now. We have working sunshades in the airplane. Those green ones are actually installed in pretty much every 737NG, so that's why they are standard equipment. Selectable independently, of course, for the FO and for the captain. And then we have an airline option as well, which by default is not installed in this very 800, because this is a Ryanair airplane, and Ryanair doesn't have the fixed sunshades. So let's go into the options, aircraft equipment, and I haven't been there too often, but here it is, window shades. If we install those, this is what we get, this is what we get, and this is what we get. Really cool feature for the immersion here, I really like it, and I'm looking forward to hear your feedback on it as well. So, I'm going to keep him in for this very flight, even though this is a Ryanair airplane, but we're still in a simulator here, aren't we? And I know so many of you are going to appreciate those, so I'll just keep him in for today. Another thing that we quickly have to talk about that is new in the 737-800 is a new switch in the flight deck. And as I see a question coming up there from Sato Files, yes, the sunshades are of course going to be added into the 600 and 700 with a future update. So, another new feature we have. Of course the new pressurization panel, but I'm sure that many of you are aware that there's a difference. But I'm actually talking about this one, the voice recorder switch. And this is something that's actually mandatory in any European Boeing 737, and I believe most American operators have it as well. And what this does is, with a switch in auto, the voice recorder is going to function as it used to, but with a switch on, the voice recorder is always going to record. And that's important because in Europe and other parts of the world, the pre-flight briefings all have to be recorded, so Boeing had to do something and had to install this switch into the flight deck, and this is what they've done. Now, it doesn't do all too much in flight simulation, but it is very nice because it is part of the normal procedures flying the 737 to flick the switch, and actually it is included in the normal checklist of my company as well. So that's why it's very nice to have this one here. Apart from that, the new air conditioning panel, I'm sure that many of you are more or less familiar with it coming from other flight simulators that already had the 737-800. Nonetheless, I am going to do a dedicated video where I'm going to line out the differences between the air conditioning systems of the smaller 737s and the larger 737s, which is going to go for the 900 as well, of course. So, we have so much more to talk about, but we also have to do a little bit of flying today, don't we? So, you can see JSX is back up here. Let's go to real time. Unfortunately, we can't go real weather yet. We're still waiting for Asobo to do their fixes and to get their simulator running again. Let's go ahead then and actually start a little bit of pre-flight. And here's a nice new quality of life feature that we have as well. You know, in these smaller 737s, it was always a little bit of hassle. First you had to get the fuel truck, then you had to get your baggage loading done. But in the 737-800 there is actually so much space up front there that you can do fuel truck and baggage carts at the same time, and you can expedite your turnarounds a little bit, because they are going to take quite a bit longer when you have to board and deboard 184 passengers, which by the way is the maximum number supported by PMDG. It does not go to 189 as the real one does, but this one's going to 184. Now, I've discussed that in detail with PMDG and kind of hoped they would change that, but unfortunately it has to be fixed for now for technical reasons, but nonetheless I'm hoping for an update in the future. Alright, so let's head back into the flight deck then, and let's actually do a little bit of stuff. So, talking about the 737-800, we are talking about quite a bit more passengers and luggage, so it is even more important that you get your boarding to start as early as possible in order to actually make your schedules. So, let's go ahead, open that front door, and then we can start both our fueling and our boarding. Our flight today is rather short, just about an hour, but for those of you who've actually gotten so used to these smaller 737s, you might be surprised about the amount of fuel that the 800 actually takes on those. By the way, talking about fuel, there have been a couple of questions in the past, since there are two winglet options, one of them being the blended winglet, as we have installed on this airplane. Another one is the split scimitar winglet, and there have been a couple of questions in the past, since they are basically the same airframe type in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Is there actually any difference in between the two in terms of the flight modeling and the fuel usage? And the answer to that is yes, there is a difference. So the difference between fuel usage with the split scimitars is absolutely modeled in the PMDG 737. Now, a couple of you have been asking as well, so why don't all airlines just install the split scimitar winglets? And the answer to that is that they only make sense from flights of a little bit more than 2 hours flight time onwards. So if we have a look at an airline like Ryanair that has an average flight time of just about an hour and 20, then they would actually be wasting fuel with it, because it is going to take more fuel to climb to cruise level, and because it has slightly more drag at lower speeds. But if you have airplanes that are primarily in cruise, so for example looking at TUI, then they are going to have the split scimitar winglets on, because those airplanes will be in the high-speed regime most of the time, where it's actually saving fuel. So looking ahead then, for our flight towards Dubrovnik, we are going to take the fuel load. Weather is pretty much fine everywhere. Unfortunately, weather has to be fine pretty much everywhere because we are forced to use default weather here due to the online services being unreliable at the moment. So for this very flight, 1 hour flight time, we're going to take 5.7 tons of fuel. So that's like 500 kilograms more fuel than we used to take on the 737-700 here. Alright, and of course at the same time we can start our baggage loading. For those of you who are wondering what would typical weights in a 737-800 look like, and here is how it works in my own airline. So if the aircraft is fully booked, meaning 189 passengers and a typical holiday flight baggage load, then we are usually looking at 59.5 tons of takeoff weight. That's fully booked. And in most cases you have like something around 180 booked passengers, giving you zero fuel weights in the region 58.5 to 59 tons. So that's a typical zero fuel weight for the Boeing 737-800. And there is somebody asking there, Mr. Libus, what I don't really understand is why PMDG basically releases the same plane 3 times. The answer to that is it's not the same plane. So all the differences between the different airframe types are modeled here, and be it rotation, be it aerodynamics, be it different engine ratings, be it air conditioning systems, you name it, all these differences are modeled, and we are going to experience one of those differences on our takeoff, because if we have a look at the airframe of the 737-800 here, we're looking at a lift-off attitude of around about 8 to 9 degrees. And if you imagine this thing tilting 8 degrees, you're going to have the elevator right on the same level with the wings. And that is going to cause a severe disturbance of airflow around the elevators, which is going to make the nose stopping in its upwards movement unless quite an amount of extra elevator is applied. So it does take quite a time to get used to rotating the 737-800 in a smooth and continuous manner. So that's just one of the examples. Something else that you are definitely going to notice is that the 800 is even more slippery than the 700. I don't know if we'll get to see that on today's approach, but we'll see about that later on. But anyway, you are going to notice that you really have to stay on top of the energy. The 737-800 actually is the most slippery of the whole 737NG family, and you are going to experience that with PMDG's new 800 rendition. Alright, so we've got everything loading up here, then let's actually go ahead and program the FMC for our flight. So I'm just taking the very quick way now. This video is not meant to focus on SOPs, but this video is meant to demonstrate the 737-800 to you. So I'll just take it quick, and then we'll go from there. So let's see, the runway 22 it's gonna be with the Nevis departure, and I don't know which one. Debrief says the Victor, so let's take the Victor then. And for arrival in Dubrovnik we are looking at runway 29 it seems. That would mean a circling approach. That would be really appreciated, but we'll see what our traffic control is going to do later on. We'll fly this one of VATSIM as much as possible. Of course I am aware of the code of conduct saying you need to use real weather, so if we are getting into the vicinity of other aircraft and if we start impeding their simulation experience because we have different winds, then of course we'll have to log off, but for as long as that doesn't happen, we'll try to take it from here. Right, so level 320 only is our trip altitude, despite us doing a full hour of flight time. That's the next thing you're going to notice in the 800. It flies a lot lower than the smaller versions of the 737s do. And you are going to notice as well that the band on your speed indicator is going to be quite a bit more narrow in the 800 than it would be on the shorter versions, just because of the higher weight of the airplane. So 0 wind, standard temperatures, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Microsoft. We'll have to deal with this. We'll have to live with it. Another new thing over here that you are going to notice. In this airplane we have 26k engines that have a double D rate to 24 and 22k, but we don't have any thrust bump. And actually many airlines don't have the thrust bump installed. That's a new option as well. The thrust bump is now optional and can be adjusted in the airline config. So that's just bringing the 737 a tiny bit closer to... that's just bringing it a tiny bit closer to reality for those of you who like airline options. Alrighty, so that's pretty much this. Going over the plane, the overhead panel is vastly the same, with a minor difference here in the door indicators. And that difference, let me actually show it to you real quick. Putting the lights on. We now have 4 overwing exits, 2 on each side, in order to be allowed to take more than 149 passengers. So the door panel is looking slightly different on the 737-800 than it did on the shorter versions of it. For the air conditioning panel, basically you want your temperature selectors set to A for the cont cabin, so the flight deck, U for the forward cabin, and then T for the aft cabin. Ignore what's being shown on the temperature selector up here, that's not accurate anyway. It's a 737 after all. And that's basically how we are going to control the temperatures. Now, as always, when the cabin crew calls, the first glance is actually going straight at the temperatures, because chances are that you're either burning or freezing them, depending on which airplane you fly, what time of the year it is, what the constellation of the stars is, and depending on God knows whatever is going on in this plane. But well, that's what it is. That's the 737-800. It certainly has its charm, we have to say. It most certainly has its charm. By the way, I started my channel with some abnormal procedures demonstrations, but I didn't do any for quite a while. So is there anybody actually interested in getting another one of those videos where I'm going over an abnormal that or going over an abnormal the way that an actual flight crew would do? Is there anyone still interested in stuff like that? So, in the meantime, someone's asking in the comments, do the 737-800s have tail skids as an option in the airline option? Well, we do have the tail skids, however, at the moment I believe they are not optional, but they are always installed. So that's the tail skid. I've demonstrated it and talked about it in my video covering the Qantas this morning, but I guess I'm probably going to do a whole separate video just on the tail skid to make you guys more familiar with it. So yes, the tail skid is included, however at the moment it's not optional, but it's always going to be there. Who knows, maybe it's going to be an option in the future. I most certainly would appreciate it to be one, but we'll see about that when the time has actually come. Alright, so guys, that's some very good feedback on some new abnormal demonstrations, so yep, I am going to do one. And I think I have an idea on what I'm actually going to do already, but we'll talk about it when we get there. And Alice, that livery looks weird. Might just be me, but it seems off. There are two things I noticed on it. Number one is that the harp on the back is a little bit too big. And the other is that the blue just seems a little bit too bright. That's my observations on the livery. But I'm going to have a closer look at it tomorrow. And if there is actually something off, then I'm going to submit a bug report to PMDG to have it fixed. By the way, for the Ryanair fans among you, PMDG is actually going to offer pretty much one airplane from every of the different fleets that Ryanair has. So you're going to see Malta Air, you're going to see Bus, you're going to see Ryanair UK, you're going to see Ryanair DAC. The only one you're not going to see is Lauda. But if you want Lauda, then number one, you're lost anyway. And number two, then there is a good representation for the Lauda airplanes available as well. So, actually, as we are just about talking about it, let's talk about liveries real quick, because those are definitely a thing. So, you know that the 737-800 is going to come in 4 different configurations. It'll come as the standard passenger airplane, it's going to come as the Boeing Business Jet 2, and then it's going to come in 2 different freighter iterations. And all of them available with blended winglets and with split skimitar winglets, making it a total of 8 airplanes. Now, some of you will disagree that the different winglets are actually different airplanes. However, the differences in modeling and handling of the airplanes are actually simulated, so I think it is fair to say that they are different airplanes. Most certainly what I can tell you is that if you're flying an 800 that has winglets, and you're flying an 800 that does not have winglets, they are flying pretty different from one another. Alright, so let's have a quick look at the liveries in the operations center then, before we actually start our flight. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there are a lot of liveries, including verified airline options. And the reason for that is obviously that since there are so many 800 flying, there are a lot of actual 800 pilots in the beta team and in the tech advisor team. So we've really gotten some very, very good feedback in the process of the development. Now, going over the different liveries, we have Aeromexico, Air China, Alaska Airlines, twice with different liveries. Actually thrice, not twice. We have American Airlines, also 3 different ones. All Nippon, Comair, which is basically the South African British Airways livery. So if anybody of you is looking for British Airways livery, then here you have it. Delta Airlines, Flair Airlines, to cover some Canadian colleagues as well. KLM, Mango Airlines. Norwegian Air Shuttle. Actually, there was one Norwegian guy pretty active in the beta. Really have to thank him, he did a great job helping the team. And we have Pegasus, Qantas, Ryanair in different versions. And by the way, the very nice thing about Ryanair over here is that you actually have different airline configs for all the different liveries. So if you look at the Delta Charlie Oscar from 2004, you're going to see a very rudimentary Boeing 737. Whilst if you look at the Quebec Alpha Hotel, then you get pretty much the new stuff that Boeing had to offer before the 737 production ceased. Then we also have something from the intermittent period, like the Echo Mike India. We have Echo November India, and then Ryanair UK and Bus, which actually are some medium-ish representations. So they already have the new fuel switches and the new LED lights, but still feature a couple of older equipment elsewhere. So for the Ryanair fans among you, there is really everything in there, and you can explore the different versions that this airplane came with over the while. Going on, Scandinavian, of course, Southwest had to be among them, right? And of course also with a verified option. Sunwing Airlines, Swoop, United and WestJet. That is covering the passenger liveries that are included for the moment. Let's move on then. For the BBJ at the moment, there is only the house livery and 7372 Aviation. Then let's go on to the freighters, for the freight jockeys among you. We have several different ASL versions, so ASL themselves, ASL in the FedEx livery, and there might be a couple more added as well. And of course there's Primair and FedEx. Well, FedEx operated by West Atlantic, to be honest. And then we also have DHL operated by iAero, and probably a couple more are going to be added in the future as well. So that covers the liveries that are included with the 737-800. That said, there are some very, very good painters. Thinking of Steve Drabeck, for example, currently working in more liveries. For example, Transavia or TUI he's currently working on. And I've already had my first look at those liveries, and they are very good. couple of you are wondering in the comments right now why there are certain airlines not included, like Smart Wings, Gol, Air Canada, and the answer to that is that if PMDG would model every single airplane, you'd probably end up with 1,000 different liveries. However, the community is so active and the community is doing such a good job that I'm absolutely convinced that we are going to see a lot of the new liveries that you guys are requesting in a very, very short period. Alright, so then let's actually go ahead and have a look. The last thing I want to show you, let's quickly go over it, is actually the cabin. So let's take out our drone. Let me quickly configure this one. So we want to move at a speed of 2 because we want to have a little bit of time. So in the very first iteration of the PMDG 737-700, when it had just been released, the cabin was not of a very good quality. However, things have changed over the past, and the cabin has been reworked to a much higher quality. Now, I don't think that's actually new with the 800, but have a look at some small details like this. You see that red flag just beyond the window over here? That's indicating that the door is actually armed. I'm just going to go through this, and this is what the cabin looks like right now. So we've got an in-flight entertainment system in the 800. I don't think that's in the 700 yet. And we have gotten quite a bit more detail here as well. Now, it's still not as detailed as the Phoenix cabin, for example, is, but then again, the PMDG runs at quite a couple frames more, so I'm happy to keep it that way. And nonetheless, there is quite a bit more detail in here. And wait until you're going to see Steve Drabeck's paints of, for example, the TUI and the Transavia interiors. He's did an excellent job on them. And those paints are going to be available right on the release. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Alright, so that is our cattle class over here. Of course, this being a Ryanair livery, we don't have any business class. However, I needed an excuse in case I'm doing a hard landing, so there you got it, guys. Now it's out of the... Now the cat's out of the bag. Anyway, that's that. Let's head back over into the flight deck. And let's actually have a look if everything's finished down here. So, we can release our fuel truck, we've got what we wanted. And we can release our cargo loaders as well. So, if you're doing your turnarounds, just be aware, it does take quite a longer time to load the passengers in the 800s just because it's such a bigger airplane. How good did I guess? 59.1 versus 59.5, that's good enough for me. Give me a takeoff weight of 64.9. Now, this is for a 1 hour flight with a full load of passengers. Now, in the 737-600, that was pretty much max takeoff weight. And then in the 700, at these weights, you could probably go to the Canary Islands, do some 4.5 hour flights. So, in the 800s, you're actually going to notice that the plane is a lot heavier. You can see we have some different flap pluck-out speeds as well. They are quite a bit higher in the 800 than they are in the smaller versions. So you are going to see that later on when we get to the arrival. Alright, so pretty much everything is set up over here. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of takeoff performance. As always, I am going to use Virtual Performance Tool for that. So let me quickly bring that one up. And finally, with Virtual Performance Tool, we also have the actual airplane that we are flying on screen. So that's something new. Finally, I no longer have the excuse in case numbers are different. But let's bring it up, let's have a look at it. So we'll go right towards our VPT, and in the Qantas video I've kind of shown a little bit of the fun you can have with this, so I'm not going to go into much detail. But what we quickly need to have a look at is the actual takeoff performance itself. So I'm probably going to go from runway 23, let's take intersection Echo with a dry one-way, 5 knots of tailwind, temperature 18 and 1011. And for the takeoff weight we'll take, what do we say we have? 64.9, so let's go with 64.9 on this one. Yep, need to fill this out again. So 22k takeoff, 36 degrees. So that's what we're actually going to use, and then it is going to be a flap 5 takeoff. Now, with those flaps, be careful. If you're using flaps 1 in the 737-800, you're having a tail clearance of only around about 30 centimeters on your rotation. Whereas on the smaller versions, it used to be 50 centimeters. So you're running much, much closer to the tail strike in the 800 than you did in the previous versions. So let's compare our takeoff speeds as well then. We're supposed to have 41, 41, 46. In the plane we have 40, 41, 45. They are within 1 knot of one another. So we can actually just take over our FMC speeds over here. The last thing we need to cover, as always, is the engine outset, and that's 25 miles straight ahead to hold, so we can just put that in as well. For those of you who are wondering why I'm still using an external tool, you may not have seen Robert's latest update. The EFB for the PMDG is progressing nicely, but it still needs a little bit more attention. So it is going to come, but Robert is expecting it to go into beta anywhere mid next month, if I'm not mistaken, and then hopes for a soonish release. Now, we're going to see how that's going to progress. I can promise you already that I'm going to do my very best to delay the release. And delaying the release in this context actually means to do a very thorough checking of it and make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. And of course, by the moment that it's actually ready, it is going to be out for you. Alright. Then let's go ahead and see if there is any air traffic control online by now. Actually, there's not, which is unfortunate because there was a booking for air traffic control at this time, which is why I've chosen this route in first place. But nonetheless, if he's not there, then we'll have to live without him. So let's go ahead, fire up our APU. In the meantime, safety inspection checklist before start checklist down to the line. Services checks, check. Maintenance status, check. Battery on. Electric hydraulic pumps on. Landing gear lever down. Ship's library, check. IRS mode selectors, nav. Gear pins 1 to 3 removed. Light test, I checked that before the stream. Same for the probe covers and for the oxygen. So, oxygen test 100%. Your numbers on. Nav transfer and display switch is normal and auto. Fuel is 5.6 required, 5.7 on board. 4 pumps on. Cabin utility IFE on. Note that these are slightly different from the 700 as well. Now we have a cabin utility switch and an IFE passenger seat switch versus the galley power switch that we had in the smaller aircraft. Emergency exit lights on, fast melts on, window heat on, air condition and pressurization, packs auto, bleeds on, set, pressurization mode selector auto, instruments are cross-checked, auto brakes RTO, the hydraulics are checked, speed brake, down attempts, parking brake set, stabilizer trim cutout switch is normal, wheel bar fire warning, check that before the stream, radius radar and transponder set and standby, radar and aileron trims 3 and 0, takeoff briefing is discussed, PA complete, FMC CDU is set, M1 and IS box. We have automatic, reduced 22k, speed 40, 41, 45. See, that's why we're doing the checklist. Set. Stabilizer trim, 6.6 units. Set. Performance weight balance, sign sand, phones off, EFB, airplane mode stowed, flight deck windows, and cockpit door. Locked doors. Closed. And the passengers are seated. Right, so GSX, this is your big appearance once again on one of my live streams again. Prepare position for pushback and departure.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Hello, that's very good, so please connect and then report again. And I have a feeling we can get a new tug. That's a very good tug spawn point, isn't it? But I know this airport is not custom configured yet for GSX, so that's why these things are spawning in the way of one another. It's a little pity that by default it's doing this, but nonetheless, that's what we have to live with at the moment.
Departure check completed. Bypass bin inserted.
String bean, as I've said at the beginning of the video, GSX does have a lot of issues, but a pushback actually kinda works. As long as you watch out for the ramp agent walking by when you are, after he's given you the clear signal. So for the pushback I tend to say GSX is good at the moment. Generally for pushback, marshalling and follow me cars, it works okay-ish that you can use it, in my opinion. For the boarding and everything, not so much yet, but I'll have a more detailed video on this coming up in the evening. So stay tuned for that. And I'm actually going to feature a special guest on it. So, for the very first time on my channel. So, Madness88 in the comments there. I had the luck to be in the cockpit for an entire flight last weekend from Amsterdam to Faro. We did a 26k takeoff because we were very heavy. Still, it accelerated so much slower than the 24k you did earlier. Well, of course, these things are a little bit dependent on one another, so you can't just say that 26 is always going to give you better acceleration. Because the flight I did earlier today was at a fairly light airplane for a 1 hour flight. While if you're flying Amsterdam to Faro, you're probably sitting in a very heavy holiday bomber. So, that acceleration could have been quite a bit different there. Right, one final check if there is ATC online by now. No, there's not. Okay, so then, pushback with the nose to the left.
Release parking brakes.
And there is nobody behind me that I could be disturbing, so brakes released.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
So off-lock at 09, 9 minutes delay. We'll put that on the flight crew for talking too much about airplanes. By the way, for talking too much about airplane to 532 viewers at the moment. That got to be 538 now. That got to be an absolute record for my channel. Thank you very, very much, guys, for being here. Really appreciate it. Okay, we're clear of the standstill. Start engine number 2. By the way, how nice is it that we finally no longer have to take control of that pushback itself? That alone is reason enough for me personally to use GSX. And if it's only for the pushback. Steve, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Indeed, I'm a little bit busy. So, did you guys just notice that you heard 2 click sounds during the engine start? The first one was the voice recorder going back to auto at 52% N2.
Set parking brakes.
The second one was the start switch going back to off. So, starting the left engine.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
So in this one I'm gonna trick GSX a little. I tell it
ground. We have a good engine start. You can disconnect.
Exactly this. And it takes GSX so long to disconnect that with the whole engine start of the number 1 engine. By the time GSX has disconnected, we're around about where we would normally be in real life. If we actually told them that we are all the way ready. So, for those of you asking, I am using GSX for the pushbacks and stuff, but I am not quite using it for everything else yet, because it still is very buggy. See? That's what I mean. Right, and we have 2 good engine starts.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass bin removed. Left is clear. Right is clear.
So, where is our dispatcher? You finally walking off to the right hand side? He's got to be there somewhere, no? Ah, no. He's going to the left side. Well, well, we'll have to live with it. We'll have to live with it. So he's carrying the bypass pin, very good. Alright, time for flight control check then. Full up, full down, full left, full right, and the rodders, full left, full right. After start checklist. Generators on, APU off, start switches continuous, probe heat on, anti-ice off, air conditioning, PAX auto, bleeds on, isolation off, auto. Flaps, 5 required, 5, C elected and a green light, step trim 6.6 units required and set. Start levers idly turned, flight controls checked, recall checked, B4 taxi checklist complete. Right, so with no other traffic around, let's go ahead then and let's make our way towards runway 22. Start up traffic, RNAV 5 India Bravo, taxi order point runway 22. And the config checked. Next thing here that you're going to notice in the 737 is how much thrust it needs to start rolling. So you are going to notice that the plane is quite a bit heavier than the 6 or 700s. You can see how slowly we're accelerating right now at about 40% N1. And if I'm taking these engines back to idle, the airplane is going to keep rolling, but it is definitely going to lose speed, and you are going to notice that more than in the smaller versions. Next thing over here straight away is, due to the longer length of the 737-800, you have to overshoot a little bit more with your flight deck in order to keep the airplane actually taxiing on the center line. So that's the next thing, and the difference is quite a bit larger than it was between the 600 and the 700, because the 600 is just about a meter shorter than the 700, but the 800 actually is several meters longer than the 700 used to be. So you are definitely going to notice this, that the nose gear is further forward than it is in the smaller airplane. Energy management during turns is also a thing in the 800, so just notice that either during or after a turn you usually need a little bit of thrust to prevent the airplane from losing too much speed. So here we go again with the next turn. See how much I'm overshooting the flight deck over the center line of the taxiway. And still the airplane's coming out right on the center line. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to how to taxi the 737-800 if you have only taxied the shorter versions. So let's do the before takeoff checklist. Config, checked, flaps, 5 green light, step trim, 6.6, set, takeoff briefing. So this is going to be left seat takeoff on runway 22, flaps 5, noise abatement 2, the buck up at 1500, and we have no specials. EOSIT is taking straight at 25 miles and climbing to an altitude, I would say around about 6,000 is going to keep us safe in the area. Now, for the SID, it's pretty much via the magenta line climbing to 5,000 feet, and the departure frequency is on Unicom, so we don't have to contact any air traffic controllers. And takeoff speeds 40, 41, 45, which is all in, and that's basically it. Any questions? Okay, no questions. Departure briefing complete. So at intersection echo, we've taken the echo figures so we can actually go straight from here. Ladder traffic runner, 5 India Bravo, taking off runway 22 from intersection echo. Before takeoff checklist below the line. MCP, set, transponder, TARA, strobe lights on, landing lights on, before takeoff check is complete. Left and right are clear. So once again for the lineup, you can really make this flight deck overshoot before you start turning the airplane back on. Just look at the turn radius that we actually have over here in this plane. Another small difference, that's the kind of stuff that real pilots mostly come over. Watch how the scale on the round radio altimeter is going to pop up anywhere between 70 and 80 knots. That's also been fixed from previous versions, just a small thing there. So, timing. Now, here we go. Takeoff thrust set, indications normal. Checked. Now watch how at the rotation, I'm going to try it at a pretty much constant input on the control column, how it'll stop at 7.5 degrees.
E1. Rotate.
Here comes the nose. And here it stops because the elevator enters the dead band. And you gotta pull quite a bit more for it to get through the dead band. RNAV. And buck up. When you're hand flying the 800, you can really feel the difference in the inertia here. Okay, flaps 1. You can really feel that it is a different airplane than the smaller versions. And flaps up. The hand flying the 800 definitely is a joy, and it is a different experience than hand flying the smaller 737s. It just feels like the larger airplane that it actually is. Right, so autopilot on then, let's go up a little bit higher, say 12,000. And we have flaps up, no lights. VNAV, set standard. Passing level 3A, kind of 120 off the takeoff checklist. Man, things are bright outside. Let's get our sunshades up and do something about it, shall we? Sure enough, the first officer will also want one. And he's got the sun on his side, so let's close this one as well. Right, so, after takeoff checks, air conditioning and pressurization is at 2.0, slightly climbing. And set. Oh. And the altimeters, standard passing 49, climbing 120. After takeoff, checklist complete. So let's talk about pitch and power values for a short moment. At 250 knots, the plane's supposed to do 10 degrees of pitch at the normal climb thrust setting, which we have at the moment, so you can see this is very, very spot on. It's doing a very good job on those. And by the way guys, thank you so much for 650 viewers at the same time. I never imagined that my channel would ever have those. Right, let's give it a little boost. Let's say we're being cleared all the way up to cruise level now. That's going to be 240. so we can delete our climb limitation. So giving it those like 4% extra is actually 10% more thrust that you're getting out of the airplane. And 10%, well, it's not a linear increase, of course, in the relation of thrust to rate of climb, but you can see how it is that little boost that's always nice to have after takeoff. When you're taking that one out, the plane just gives you that little kick in your back there. Altimeters, passing 100, climbing 240, 10 checks. Got the fuel balanced with 4 pumps on, the lights are coming off, APU is off, air conditioning pressurization, 4.1, slightly climbing and set. We'll keep the fast mode on for now, but we can release our cabin crew already. Recall checks, 1 to 1.5. Monitoring, and that's the 10 checks complete. And actually I just see that I did my fault on an incorrect frequency, not on Unicom. Well, doesn't look like we disturbed anybody, so it should hopefully be alright. Right, so that's the departure in the 737-800. You guys did see the deadband over there and how that is affecting your rotation. So that's a very neat feature in the 737-800 that I'm very happy to actually see it included in the simulator, because in the P3D version of the 737 it was just not included at all, at least as far as I remember. So that's very nice, that's new. 6 degrees entering clouds. Let's put some anti-ice on. Tie. So very nice little feature that we have over there. So let's see if we can take any shortcuts over here. Maybe going straight ahead to o'clocks. Oh, o'clocks, that's over here. I'm trying to cut a little bit of the flight time short over here, because I have to say I'm a little bit time constrained right now. Landing at 6:15, that's quite alright, but I only have until 6:30. Because, of course, I've had the past 10 days off from work, and then, of course, when do things start to happen? Of course, when you have to go right back to work. So the day after tomorrow, I'm going to do one more live stream tomorrow evening with a little bit longer flight where we can talk a bit more about the differences between the types. And thereafter, unfortunately, it's 5 days flying the real one again. But hey, I'm saying unfortunately over here, while at the same time flying the real one again. That is pretty cool, isn't it? At least that's what I'm personally thinking all the time. Because I've been an avid flight simmer for many years before I actually started flying in real life, so it still is this feeling like, alright, so you're actually doing the real thing over here, the thing that you always wanted to do. That's still a special feeling. But of course there are times as well where it would be very nice to have a little bit more time for the hobby and have a little bit more time for Flight Simulator, because PMDG is doing a really good job with the 737 over here, so I'm really looking forward to see that one in on your guys' computers as well. Okay, we are finally getting out of the clouds. Engine anti-ice off. And then we can release our passengers as well. So it is days like this where we have the sun coming up out of the clouds, where everything's getting bright, where we are most definitely going to use the sunshades. And if I'm totally honest with you, we are even going to use them on both sides, because it is not very nice when all that light is reflecting from the clouds, coming into the flight deck and reflecting off your EFB screen. Let's have a quick another look outside. I'm flying the 800 beta for several weeks now, and I don't know, it still looks a little bit strange that all of a sudden my airplane has become so long. That doesn't seem right. I just got accustomed to the 600. And after flying the 600, I already thought that the 700 is long. And now I'm seeing this. I'm really looking forward to see the 900 ER in action. But before we're going to get to the 900, we are going to get to the EFB. So that's hopefully coming up in like 3 weeks' time or so. Oh, and we are climbing a little bit fast over here. So talking about climbing fast, something that you are going to notice is that, especially at higher altitudes, the 800 is a much more difficult airplane to control. Are we entering that cloud again? Yes, we are. Engine NTI is on. Let's hope it's not going to be too bumpy. So, what you are going to notice at higher altitudes is that, say above level 300, you can't just easily take ATC. Yeah, of course we can do that rate of climb, no problem. But it is actually going to take a little bit longer. Now, just recently, I did a test flight from Sharm el-Sheikh to Frankfurt in a fully loaded holiday bomber. And we had like 20 degrees of ISA deviation, plus 20 degrees. And it literally took me almost half an hour to get up to cruise level, because the airplane would just give me like 600-700 feet a minute. Now, of course, that was with an extreme temperature deviation, so we have to keep that in mind when we're talking about this. But nonetheless, even without such temperature deviations, rates of climb of like around 1,000 feet a minute are very common for the 737-800 at higher altitudes. So it's not quite as easy an airplane to fly as the smaller ones. On this very short flight, it's hard to demonstrate this, but the other thing that I can definitely demonstrate you is the extra energy this airplane has on approach. So, if we take our approach and just calculate a shortcut over here, maybe we'll go from the waypoint before Olegu, so that's 701 to Nara. Then we'll end up with an altitude restriction at Nara of 14.5, so let's put that one in. Altitude management and energy management is something very, very important in the 800. Those of you who are used to fly the 600, you will probably be behind the airplane when you step into the 800, because it just takes so much more pre-planning to actually reduce this airplane's speed. So, preparing for shortcuts like this is very important. I'm going to publish a whole series of videos in which I'm going to cover the differences in handling the 737-800 and its energy, and slowing it down, what you can do if you're getting high on approach and stuff like that. Because that is going to pose a major problem to quite a couple of you who are not used to the airplane. Alright, so let's see what the actual weather at the destination is going to be like. Well, it's not like I could pretty much tell you, because I have used the weather preset for this one. But let's do it that way. In real life, they currently have a wind 300 degrees at 12 knots. So if I'm looking at our destination, we have a runway 29 available over here. Or we alternatively, we have the straight-in approach. So it is going to be a runway 29 for us. And that's very interesting, because on runway 29 we have a couple of different approaches. Mostly it's an RMP AR approach or a VOR approach. Now, let's have a look at what we actually have in here. Because I inserted the RMP approach, and that one is following a curved path inbound. So if we have a look at this, we can see that the nav database does not yet support RF flags, but Navigraph has inserted RF waypoints over here. So we are actually getting a route line that looks very, very similar to the route line that we would be expecting from the actual airplane. So let's actually go ahead and fly the approach like this, shall we? I honestly have to say I haven't even done that yet in the PMDG 737, so I'm looking very much forward to see what that's going to look like as well. Now, for the minimums, we're going to take 1,400 feet. So let's dial that in. Still waiting for the baro minimum selector here to be improved, but that is surely going to come. At least I surely hope so. So minimums over here 1400, and you guys can't see the chart on screen right now because I've removed the Navigraph app to isolate the crashes to desktop. But there is actually a category Charlie or a category Delta minimums published. The difference is the VREF that your airplane would have at maximum landing weight. And here comes something interesting in the 737-800s that is going to affect the 900 as well. So in the 800 there are different maximum landing weights certifiable from Boeing. And my airline is using 65,317 kilograms, so 65.3 tons. While especially some holiday carriers like for example Sun Express have the airplane certified to over 66 tons. And that is making the difference. If you have a look at this, 65.3 tons of landing weight, get 141 knots VREF. But if you're going a little bit higher, for example, if you're going 66 tons, you're going above this. And if you're going above it, then your airplane is no longer a category Charlie airplane, then it is a category Delta, so you have to apply the category Delta minimums. That's one more thing to take into account when you're flying the 737-800. So, Plaint is asking me in the comments, what's my opinion about the wing flex difference between the 800 and the 600? I've never flown an actual 600, so I can't really tell you. And if I'm totally honest with you, wing flex is something that me, personally, doesn't really interest myself. Because I'm rarely looking outside. But let's take the opportunity and actually look outside for a second. Because you're going to notice that in the 800 you've got to stick your face pretty close to the window to actually even see the wing. And looking out at this, see a little bit of flexing over there, but that's totally fine. Now, I have on a very few occasions when we flew through a little bit of turbulence and had enough margin on the speeds that we didn't have to monitor it that actively, I've looked out and I saw the wing bouncing around a little bit, but that's really all that I'm personally interested in terms of wing flex. So I'm sorry that I cannot give you a better answer over here. But sure enough, the 800 is a heavier airplane, so I would expect a little bit more wing flex than in the smaller versions. But then again, wing flex is really something that I'm personally not too interested in. So I cannot give you a professional opinion on that. I'm sorry. By the way, we've just received the contact me from the air traffic controller finally. 35 minutes later than booked, but nonetheless better late than never. So let's give him a quick call, and he's probably going to be able to tell us the landing runway as well. I mean, I would like to do that circling, but if he tells us to go straight in, well, let's talk to him, let's find out. Hardware radar low, runner 5 India Bravo, flight level 240, inbound O-clocks.
RNAV 5 India Bravo, Adria radar, Takeoff 5263.
Squawk 5263, runner 5 India Bravo.
Adria radar, good evening, Emirates 093, flight level 340.
Right, 5263 on the squawk, let's see what he's going to give us.
Emirates 093, Adria radar, radar identified.
Adria Dobadan with 105 Foxtrot, we are inbound.
In the meantime, let's go ahead with the planning. We're still going to burn off quite a bit of fuel, 900 kilograms. So the 800 does burn a little bit more than the smaller ones, giving us a landing weight 62.6. So here we go, 62.6. Now have a look at these V speeds. So flaps 30.
5 India Bravo, identified information Alpha, Nera 1 Yankee arrival.
Runway 5 India Bravo, information Alpha, Nera 1 Yankee, and confirm it's going to be the RMP approach, runway 29er.
Ethan.
Thank you. Okay, so let's actually configure that real quick. Alright, so have a look at these reference flap speeds. So for standard flap 30 configuration, which is what we are mostly using in the 800, you're looking at 145 knots plus 5 knots VREF addition, so you're going to have an approach speed of 150 knots. And that is going to mean that your descent rate is going to be quite a bit higher than on the 737 700 as well. So after all, if we are looking at 150 knots ground speed times 5 is your descent rate, you're looking at 750 feet a minute. Now, make that something around 800 feet a minute maybe, that you are usually going to see. So you're going to be very, very close to the 1000 feet a minute. That is your maximum for and below the landing gate. So there again, control of the airplane is a point that is not quite as easy. Even more so because the airplane does most definitely have its quirks steering it, and it is quite a bit more slippery than the smaller versions are. So let's put some anti-ice on again. By the way, in case you've wondered why that thing was just pulled out and in right again, I clicked it too quickly because I wanted to click the second one, so that's not a PMDG, but that's just me. Right, and anti-ice back off. Exactly right in the tops over here. That's what we usually try to avoid in real life, but descending is of no use, climbing is of no use, so it's only very occasional that we're actually running into this, so I can definitely look over it.
Foxtrot information Bravo,
At least for now.
Information Bravo.
So, that's basically it for our configuration. Let's quickly talk landing flaps. I'll have a separate video on those coming up. So, in a 737-800, flaps 30, auto brakes 3 is usually giving you something around 17 to 1800 meters of runway requirement. If you're using flaps 40 instead, you can subtract 100 meters from that.
Bravo, proceed direct Delta Uniform 701.
Direct Delta Uniform 701, Ryanair 5 India. Direct Delta Uniform 701, Ryanair 5 India, Bravo. I've just changed my push to talk key from my from one joystick to another, so I just pressed the wrong key. That's why I had to do the call twice. Right, so direct 701, that's making life easy for us, because then from there we can join the RNP approach straight away, making it really easy for us. So I'm really looking forward to this approach. The runway 29 into Dubrovnik really is beautiful. I can only recommend everybody of you to fly that one. And to finish what I just started, flaps 30 auto brake 3, 17 to 800 meters, flaps 40, subtract 100 meters from that, and if you are going to use auto brakes 2, add another 250-300 meters to it.
Why would you like to go direct chemic?
Right, so forecast page is in, let's draw some rings as well. It's going to be a runway 29. So we have 10 miles and 4 miles.
Reserve 105, Foxtrot, if you go direct.
Alright.
At that angle you will not be able to make the turn for ILS, so continue direct off.
Roger with the 105 Foxtrot.
Alright, so that's pretty much all our setup completed. I'm going to spare you guys the full approach briefing. The important part we've seen. It's going to be the U-turn in, and it's all RNAV VNAV. Last thing we can check, however, is our speed for the turn. So the 737-800 flies quite a bit faster than the shorter ones, which means that we have to take careful control of our airspeed. So I would say somewhere over here we're like 10 miles out, so we want to have a maximum of 200 knots. So the database says maximum 210, but I'm going to reduce this one actually to 180 knots. And that is going to give us much better controllability of the airplane. Be aware, 180 knots in the 737-800, you will definitely need your flaps extended. So to give you an example of what the speeds are going to look like, if you take the flap 40 speed and add 70 knots to it, that's your flaps up speed. So we're looking at 209 knots clean speed. Then subtract 20 from that. So 189 is our flap 1 speed. and then 169 is going to be our flap 5 speed. So you can see the airplane flies quite a bit faster than the 700 or the 600. This, by the way, is also where our flaps 2 comes in as a very handy flap setting. We just said our flap 1 speed is going to be 189. Now, air traffic control very often gives a speed of 180 knots. And if you extend flap 2, it's going to go 8 knots below the flap 1 speed, so giving you 181 knots. And you can perfectly fly 181 if ATC tells you to fly 180, and it spares you the extra drag from the flap 5 setting. One more thing here that you want to take care of is you want to know if you have the short field performance kit installed on this airplane, because if you don't have it, you can use flaps 10 as it extends the leading edge flaps completely to slow the airplane down. But if you do have it, then flaps 10 is not going to be of any use, because it's just not going to make a difference in terms of the drag, or the lift for that matter. So we are definitely looking at the airplane being pretty hard to slow down if you have the short field performance kit. Add to that in my personal airline it is not permitted for pilots to use the landing gear to slow the airplane down. So just imagine you're not allowed to use the landing gear to slow down. You have to use the speed brakes. Couple of combinations of what you can do. At 250 knots below low 100, you're looking at around about 1,400 feet a minute rate of descent. Can go up to 1,600, 1,700, but you've got to be lucky for that. And if you are using speed brakes together with that, it's going to give you like 300 feet a minute more. But the best angle of descent really is achieved at 220 knots, flaps 5 with a full speed brake. And I can tell you now already that you are going to get into this situation where you will be higher in energy in the approach. So if you get into it, remember, flaps 5, 220 knots with a speed brake, around about 2,300 foot a minute, and that is the best angle of descent that you can get out of the 737-800. The other thing that you are going to notice is that all of a sudden our descent is, or our top of descent is going to be quite a bit earlier. If we add our ring 3 times the cruising altitude over here, you can see the top of descent is before it, even though we have to fly all the way around the airport. So it does take quite a bit longer to decelerate the airplane and to descend the airplane. So look at this, we're looking at around about 100 nautical miles to descend with a 5-knot tailwind. Of course, VNAV is going to do a great job at it, but it's not perfect, so don't expect it to be perfect.
Traffic is on left-hand downwind for runway 29.
Reducing 210 speed of 5 I don't know the
Lufthansa 8 Kilo Alpha Adria radar Davaran set for 1000.
So, Metal Eye, we need help regarding software update 9 as many have crashes to desktop at the moment. How to fix, install the beta, and if how to go to SU10 live build next month. So the honest reply I can give you, the only honest reply, is turn off all the data services of Microsoft Flight Simulator. All the data services. Let's quickly go for descent. Ryanair 5 India Bravo, request descent.
Ryanair 5 India Bravo, descent flight level 110.
Descent flight level 110, Ryanair 5 India Bravo. Set, 110 tracked, and VNAV is going to start the descent at 4 miles, so I'm not going to interfere with that. Alright, so, yeah, the only way to get around the CTDs at the moment is to turn off all the online functionality, and that's unfortunately all you can do at the moment. Now, just today I saw a stream of British Afjeek, and he had a replacement for the terrain using a different data source that was not the Microsoft server, and he's been using Real Environment Extreme
And Alpha
for the weather. So he had
resume
at least satellite terrain and real weather. But that needs external add-ons, so maybe if you head over to his channel you're going to find a little bit of information on how he did that. I didn't do it for today's stream because I'm hoping that Asobo is going to fix their problems. Hopefully today or tomorrow. So then we'll be back to our full Microsoft Flight Simulator as we are used to it and as we love it. But unfortunately for the moment that's all that you really can do. Then, Rovac is asking, anyone is allowed to retexture the cockpit? Actually, everyone is allowed. We used to see that problem with the PMDG oiler in the past, but ever since it's been amended and you are now allowed to repaint the flight deck as well. So just read the note for modders that comes with the installer of any PMDG 737 at the moment, and that is going to tell you the exact terms of how you can repaint your aircraft. But it certainly is allowed nowadays to repaint the flight deck of the 737s. PMDG did learn their lessons from it. Right, we're about to enter some clouds again, so engine anti-ice on. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to set our passengers down because it might get a little bit turbulent inside the clouds. Then, Elling, do I think it is a lack of wear in the cockpit? No, not at all. In fact, I am very happy how clean the cockpit is, because that is how clean the cockpits are in my airline. Because we are taking good care of them. And we are not spilling coffee about it and don't do anything about it. If anybody of us spills a little bit of coffee about it, then we're going to take out a towel and clean it. And even the older airplanes in my airline, there are airplanes which are 15, 16 years old, they are still in a very good shape. So I don't think that we need all this wear and tear that so many of you are asking for at all. I'm very happy with how clean the cockpit is. Alright, inside the clouds, we don't need these anymore. Evan, how much is the 737-800 going to cost? I don't have any confirmed information on this. I absolutely don't have any confirmed information. But a while ago, Robert said that the 737-800 would be $70 US. But in the same post, he also said that the 600 would be 50, while in the end it turned out at 35. So the last information that's been given, and that's several months old, is $70 US. But if that is going to be the final price or not is not clear. So it might be, it might not be. We don't know. And Captain Riot saying they're $89.99. If you have any source for that, please share it, but I'm not aware of it. Aaron, did I hear about an incident yesterday in Eindhoven where a Wizz airplane had to reject takeoff at 135 knots due to bird strike? I haven't heard about it particularly, but if 135 knots is less than V1, then they can perfectly reject the takeoff for it if they see the safety of the flight not guaranteed. So that's perfectly within a pilot's decision. Yeah, you get what I'm saying, yeah? Right? And Steve, do you know if PMDG is going to give a discount to 736 and 7 owners? I do know, and unfortunately they do not give a discount according to the last information that's been released. They're treated as separate products from one another, and therefore no discount is given. Whether you like it or not personally, I have an opinion on it, but I'm not going to share that opinion in this stream. But if I'm saying this already, then you can kind of imagine what it's about. So I'm just not going to say anything about it. At least not my personal opinion. But then again, hearing the prices,
I
we have to
have
keep
to
something
check
we have to keep something in mind. The PMDG 737 at the moment probably is the most complex aircraft that we have in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I know how much work went into developing it, so I can absolutely understand the price. And what comes now is my pure personal opinion. And you are right in that the 700 already cost $70 US. However, I tend to say that the 700 is probably not going to finance the development of the whole series, because $70 probably is cheaper than what PMDG had to pay for the development. So I guess that PMDG is only entering the stages where they're actually earning money once the 800 is out. But that's just pure personal speculation. So don't quote me on that, as said, personal speculation.
Emirates 093, bye-bye, thanks for coming online and take care.
You too, bye-bye. Runner 5, India Bravo, descend to 8,000 feet, QNH in Dubrovnik 1006.
Runner 5, India Bravo, descend to 8,000 feet, QNH 1006. Okay, set, 8,000 checked. And we'll have to go non-standard here, we'll take 1013. The reason being that we have a default weather preset where the QNH is 1013. I know, technically speaking, that's not allowed on VATSIM, and if I'm getting into the way of anybody because I'm not shown at a correct altitude, or because the wind is different there, then I'm going to lock off the network. But yeah, for now, with the online services being unreliable and causing crashes to desktop at the time of this live stream, unfortunately there is nothing that can be done about it. And if any supervisors are seeing this, then just tell me if you want me to lock off, and then I'm going to do it. So, others are asking about other aircraft, like the 777 or the Just Flight RJ. Now, let's keep this stream to the 800, and we'll talk about the other aircraft in upcoming streams, okay? Right, leaving the clouds, so let's take our engine anti-ice off. Something that you are going to notice when the engine anti-ice is off is that the engines are actually going to spool down a little bit. You can see that right now. Looking at something in the region of about 2% N1, 3% N1. And that extra thrust, that's actually made us fly 15 knots faster than planned. So I told you earlier that energy management is very, very important in the 800s. So let's get that off already by extending the speed brake. And I'm going to go to full speed brake now and just see how effective or not that is.
Turkish 389, I have a little bit of issue with my instrument. Can I have like 1 minute to fix it?
No problem, take your time, just report and don't descend below flight level 120.
120 flight level. Turkish 389.
So here we go with the speed under control again. Speed brakes are retracted once more. By the way, the positive side of the default weather presets is that they just look absolutely beautiful, don't they? So have a look at this. The last thing the bird saw. No, I used that one on the contest preview already, so I can't say it here. But this is just beautiful, isn't it?
You have updated weather.
Where?
We need altimeter power station.
Yankee Tango Hotel u redu, Dubrovnik, QNH 1006.
1006, hvala puno. Turkish 389, descending to 5112. to departure level 1 is Zulu, direct to Tafu, 33
An absolutely beautiful airplane, I have to say.
After Tafu, expect Zulu.
In every
Alpha
aspect, the
4
800 is just right, isn't it? If you're looking at a 900, it seems too long. If you're looking at the 600, it kinda is too small. But the 800 is just about right, isn't it? Now don't tell the loaders though, because tail tipping is very much of an issue in the 800. So it's very easy to actually make it bounce on the back while standing at the gate.
Echo Adria Radar Valandan identified information Bravo, Relin 1 Zulu arrival.
Listen to Echo has information Bravo, Relin 1 Zulu arrival.
Brian, yes, I've switched off the online services completely. So if you see some default looking terrain down there.
Bravo descent 4000 feet, please for RNP 29 report baseline.
On F5 and your Bravo descent 4000 feet, RP 29 outlooked. Right, so let's do a little work again.
Alpha and
So, 4,000 feet, and let's do the chan checks as well. Seatbelts are on already. Lights on bank 25, Acom, and press is 4.0, slightly descending out. Set Patron is on, recall checks, 1.5 deselected, and that's the 10 checks almost complete. Cabin crew, 10 minutes to landing.
Locked.
Alright.
Wizard 105, Foxtrot, descend to 3000 feet. From Earwood, clear for ILS 05, report the start.
So, we're trying to lose energy right now on the 800, and just look at how very, very slowly the energy is actually bleeding off. Note when I'm referring to energy, I mean altitude and speed combined, talking about the total energy of the airplane. Of course, primarily looking at the speed indicator over here, but combine it with the rate of descent we're seeing, and you'll see that the 800 is a very, very hard plane to slow down. Actually, very often in real life, VNAV is actually slowing down so slowly that we just hit vertical speed dial in minus 100 feet, and only when the airplane is more or less on speed again, we hit level change again.
Radar 124, Adria Radar, Dovardan.
Right, so 230 for the initial approach, that's part of the approach procedure.
Information is filed after departure left, heading 180, initially 8000 feet and 5224.
One last look outside before we have to return and stay in the flight deck for the rest of the approach. Once again, thank you so much PMDG for the registration over here. Much appreciated to have the Echo Mike India. Right, so back to the flight deck. Those clouds are really reflective. Let's do something about that. That's better. We've got to take them off later on in the approach, but for now, we'll just keep the sun visors open. But as said, the sun visors on the windows here, they are optional equipment. Can be selected by the airline options. And the green ones are available at all times. You can move them all along the handrail that's up here. You can stow them with a click on the main part up here, and you're going to find them down here in the pocket next to where the pilot's flight back would be. Just note how stretched they are over here, because you can imagine all the time throwing them down there in the pocket, taking them back out. That is really not good for the glass, and that's exactly how those things look like. Very, very rarely you have a sun visor that is not scratched. So, slowing down once again, Once again, just look at how hard it is for the airplane to lose its energy. You've got to be on top of it with the flaps. So once the buck reaches the flaps, so once the FMC down here actually is in speed blah blah slash flaps, and once the buck is down to the flaps, you really want to take those flaps out, because VNAV does take the drag of the flaps into account. So we've almost reached it right now, so let's go flap 1. In the meantime, of course, I've omitted the descent and approach checklist, so let's go for those real quick. Descent checks, pressurization, land out 500, any IS off, approach refuel is cast, IS and out box are checked and set. And the approach checklist, after a quick frisk, frequencies we don't need, roller on off. The rings are around the runway 29 at 10 miles and 4 miles, addons, not applicable, stamper instruments set, courses. Well, we could set the runway courses real quick, so on approach course is going to the 294, let's put that in.
Departure, initial climb 8,000 feet, squawk 5227 frames.
The 294, approach checklist, altimeters and instruments, set cross check, approach rates checked and set, approach checks complete. Note the vertical situation display is also a very nice tool on your energy management, so take that into account on your flights.
Echo descent flight level 210.
Flight level 210, switch to Echo.
Right, let's go flap 5. Right now, 5 in your Bravo is turning base. We can actually descend all the way with the procedure, so 2500 feet it is. Alrighty. Oh Brian, do the sun visors impede the HUD? Yes they do. So if you have a HUD installed, you can only move the sun visor like this, and then it's going to block the part that extends downwards of the HUD. I forgot the exact name right now, because my airline doesn't have the HUD. But if you have the thing folded away, then you can put the sun visors all the way to the front as well. So I guess you'll just have to find a good compromise there.
5 Foxtrot, contact tower 124675. Bye bye.
Right, so
124.675.
turning base, it's time to stow those sun visors. As nice as they look, eventually you have to find the right point in time to get rid of them. Runway 5 in your Bravo base.
Runway 5 India Bravo, runway 29 clear to land, wind 300 degrees 10.
Runway 29 clear to land, runway 5 in your Bravo. So my apologies for the terrain not looking as good over here, as said the online services are turned off because of the Asobo crash to desktop issues at the moment.
Wizard 105 Lima, radar rubber done, identified point flight level 200 Aris.
But even with the online services turned off, we can still get a very good impression of what this would look like. So for those of you who want to try themselves, we are flying the RNAV RMP-AR approach for runway 29 at Dubrovnik here.
Runway 04
So let's go ahead and set our missed approach altitude already. 5,000 feet is in. We did already say clear to land, so we might as well just do all of this. So note, now we are flying in flaps 5, and in flaps 5 this thing is doing almost 170 knots. Have a look at the speed over here. And that is actually what we are going to use all the way till 4 miles. But you will notice how tight it gets then with the landing gate, when we still have to establish our landing configuration. And it is actually pretty fun to get that under control, because once you've actually got it under control, it really becomes second nature. But if you are behind the airplane, then you definitely want to start configuring the airplane early.
Direct signal is 1059.
Okay, right into the sun. Nope, I want that visor back. That's better. Right, runway's inside, just the front over there. Approaching 4 miles, gear down, flap 15. Now be aware, flaps extension speed is 175 knots, so we're just about below that. Flaps 30, DRF plus 5, and down we go. Landing checklist, start switches, continuous, recall, check, speed brake, arm green light, landing gear down, free green. Auto brake preset, flaps 30, 30, green light, landing lights on, landing checklist complete, and the crew is seated, clear to land. Checked.
Minimums.
Continue. Kind of reminds me of the time flying in FSX and P3D, the scenery here. But that's what Microsoft Flight Simulator looks like without the online services. Unfortunately, but that's what it is. So here we are again. 500 feet. Note also how much thrust the 800 actually needs on final approach to keep its airspeed. So that's quite different from these smaller versions. 500 continue. Well, let's not get too high here. Told you, at this speed you're very quickly approaching the 1,000 foot a minute descent, and then get this.
Sink rate. 20. 10. Nice landing.
Right, speed brake up, thrust wheels normal. And we have 81%, 100 knots. 80 knots. 60 knots, manual brakes. Auto brakes disarm. Let's go back to auto reverse then.
124, request taxi.
Right, so welcome everyone to Dubrovnik. I hope that you've enjoyed this flight. Bear with me for the way into the gate, and as soon as we arrive at the gate I am going to read over a couple of the questions that you guys have asked, and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible. RNAV 5 Bravo India vacating.
RNAV 5 India Bravo, welcome to Dubrovnik taxi to the apron via Whiskey, stand 1-2.
Stand 1-2 via Whiskey, RNAV 5 India Bravo. So those of you who have seen my tutorial series, you guys will know that that we do single engine taxi as much as possible in the 737s. And in the 6 and 700 it didn't really matter, but in the 800 the limit of 63 tons for doing single engine taxi actually starts becoming an issue. And right now we landed at about 62.5, so we're just about at the weight where we could do single engine taxi. So we've got to be very careful when we actually do it. But I'm taking very slow here that we reach the required engine cooling period so that I can show you that while we are taxiing in.
Turkish 389er confirm on ILS 04.
Right, we're fairly close to the apron, so I'm going to flick the APU on as well.
ILS.
We just got to find our stand number 12. It's probably in front of the terminal if we have 20 over here. So, let's just pretend we've waited our 3 minutes, and shut an engine down. Always number 2 that's going off. And now we are going to do single engine taxi. So, you'll notice that the 800 by itself keeps rolling because it just has that much energy. But when you have to reduce speed for a turn, that's where things are going to get interesting. So when we are reducing our speeds to less than 10 knots for the turn into the gate, and then do a very tight turn in, that's where we really have to keep our energy under control. So what many captains do is when you turn into the gate,
He's under 8,000 feet.
it's going to 8 knots now, we're starting the turn and I'm adding thrust straight away. And just look at this turn angle that we can actually do over here. So just make the engine spool up a little. When you're inbound, it can go back down, and then you usually have sufficient energy to get the airplane stopped.
Direct Sierra Papa 401, so 6
Alright, so this line usually marks where the captain's supposed to sit. So here we are, parking over here. Right, so parking brake set, APU is available and online. So let's shut our airplane down. Note the new step over here in the shutdown procedure now, which is the voice recorder switch. So now, before you go to the isolation valve, just go downwards on the panel, so voice recorder on, and then you can put the isolation valve switch to open. Alright, so we are approaching 20% N2, so guys, put your questions in, now's the time that I can answer them. And 20%. In the meantime, I'm quickly going to read the transit shutdown checklist. So, electrical on the APU, fast modes off, probe beat auto, NEIs off, voice recorder on, finally. Vacuum packs auto, engine bleed on, APU bleeds. Yeah, it's hot outside, on. Exterior lights set, start switches off, auto brake off, speed brake, down and 10, flat, up and light, parking brake set, start levers, cut off, weather radar off, transponder is on 2000 standby, CVRCB in, and cockpit door unlocked. Right, so let's get our ground services going and let's start our deboarding, and then I will be with you for your questions momentarily.
Wings 053, requesting push on start.
So, here we are.
053, pushback start has approved, runway 11, correction runway.
All we need to do real quick, open that door. Hope that you've enjoyed this first flight in the 737-800. If you did, let me know in the comments below. And now I'm excited to see what you guys are going to say about my landing.
I gave you Mokun 2 Echo departure, correct?
So, Oliver, can we have another flight, please? Yes, tomorrow evening I'm going to do one more, which is going to be a bit longer as well, so that we have a bit more time in the cruise. So tomorrow I'm going to do another flight.
You don't have to change it because I will vector you.
Radislav, when should we use flap 40 in the 800? I'm going to cover that in a separate video. So that video will be up in the next couple of days. Planet Mikey, is Israel Airlines livery included? Unfortunately not, but it will hopefully be painted very quickly after release. Usually painters are very quick on getting these things to work. So I'm not all that worried about it. MG King, does the weather radar work yet? No, not yet. As soon as the software update 10 is released and we have the final API, we are going to have a look at the weather radar and how it can be implemented. Then, Coda 101. Is the speed trim system on this aircraft, and if so, will it become optional in the future? Speed trim system is definitely on this aircraft, and it will not become optional because it is not optional in the real aircraft. Then, Soko Peter, can you now use GSX fully? Yeah, well, it does not cause crashes to desktop anymore, but GSX still has its limitations. So, I'm going to release a video this evening talking about it with a special guest as well. I don't know anymore. How do you save the panel? That's described in the introduction document. Have a look over there. Then, Derby Q, can you show us the liveries that are available? Of course I can. I did it at the beginning of the stream, but... well, let's do it once again. No, that's the wrong one. This is what we're looking for. So the liveries are Aeromexico, Air China, Alaska, American, All Nippon, Com Air Limited, which is basically the British Airways colors you see flying in South Africa, Delta Airlines, Flair Airlines, KLM, Mango Airlines, Norwegian, Pegasus, Qantas, Ryanair and all its subsidiaries, Scandinavian, Southwest, Sunwing, Swoop, United and WestJet for the passengers. Then for the BBJ we just have a 7372 Aviation. For the Boeing converted freighter we're looking at ASL, FedEx and Primair. And finally for the BDSF we have DHL. Going a little bit further up, let's see what else I missed there. Weather radar, I've answered that. What airport is it? We are at Dubrovnik from MXI Design. Very nice looking airport, I have to say. And Jotty70, thanks for not having a girlfriend who is stopping you from streaming. Well, actually that is exactly what's going to happen in about 10 minutes or so. But if I have to close the stream quickly, then you know why. Then Cideral, why are the online services off? Because they are causing crashes to desktop at the moment, so many people are plagued by crashes to desktop right now, including myself, and turning the offline services off is fixing them for now. So we'll have to wait for our Sobo to get their stuff together, and then we can hopefully do the we can hopefully do it again. WQ, what a shame there is no Echo India Delta Alpha Charlie livery. Maybe someone will create it. Well, the Delta Alpha Charlie is not even flying for Ryanair anymore. I believe it's been converted to a freighter. But I'm really hoping that we're gonna see Echo India DAT, which is flying for ASL in Amazon Prime colors now, based out of Leipzig and Cologne. Ratzislav, do you know if it's possible to set the Ryanair checklist on the Yokes and PMDG's options? Not in the PMDG options, but it is possible for repainters to include the checklist in their paints. Alright, let's scroll a little bit further up. Maximilian, why do 737 pilots only put 2 landing lights on? That's because those are the fixed landing lights that are located in the front of the wings, so over here and over here. The other 2 are the retractables that are located below the belly of the plane that actually extend outboard. And by extending outboard, they are causing additional drag and therefore additional fuel usage. And to reduce the fuel usage, they are only extended when the landing clearance is given. Evan, release date between tomorrow and the end of the month. So Robert has said in his latest announcement that release time frame is going to be between the 23rd and the 31st. Just Jesse, can we have a sneak peek at the cabin? Yes, we can. At least provided I get this under control. Now, here we are. So, here we are on the air stairs, and here we are in the front galley of the plane. This is what it looks like. Pretty much very, very basic, but that's how it is. Well, I'm saying very basic here, but actually I do find this level of detail to be quite alright. I have to file on the bug report, however. The service interphone is missing over here. I'm gonna file that one as a bug. Release delayed by the week, guys. So this is the front galley. Then looking into the actual passenger cabin. They did an excellent job on the quality of those seats over here. So those have really gotten a good update. I like how they look like now. Of course, this is allowed to be painted now. And Steve, I know you are somewhere out there. And I'm really looking forward to install your Transavia and updated TUI liveries with the cabin painted. So probably I'm going to feature one of those tomorrow, unless I decide to go for a freighter, but we'll see. We'll see. Also nice, by the way, to have the in-flight entertainment screen up here. So please touch screen to continue. I'm touching it, I'm touching it. No, just joking. This is texture, of course. But very nice details on the seats. I'm really liking the progress that this cabin is making. It's still not 100% as much of quality as the Phoenix cabin is, but then again, we are having like 5 to 10 frames more in the PMDG, so in my opinion that is quite a good sacrifice, isn't it? Evan, will people be able to add split scimitar winglets? Well, people will not be able to do so on the fly, however, repainters can paint their aircraft on split scimitar liveries, and then you will have them. So it's a thing of the livery. If the livery has split scimitars included, then we have it. If not, then not. Big S, interesting username. Will we get the 800 for a discount if we already own it for P3D? If you bought the P3D version in the year 2019, then you've got $100 discount that you can use in your PMDG shop account. So if you bought it within 2019, then you will have this discount that you can use, unless of course you've used it up already for the 600 and 700, of course. Alrighty guys, so that shall conclude today's video. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you did, leave it a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and I am really looking forward. Tomorrow evening I'm going to do one more stream in the 800s. Probably a little bit longer flight, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And in that I can show you a little bit more of the details. In the meantime, my final GSX video is going to come up this evening, around about at 9 o'clock. And I'll have a couple more preview videos showing different airline options and stuff that I've only talked briefly about in this video, in further details coming up over the course of the next days as well. So there will be a lot more stuff coming. I'm really hoping to see some of you over there, and in the meantime, enjoy your evening. Get your 700 out, practice the rotation. I've already released that video. And then the 800 is hopefully going to be out very, very soon. So, thank you very much guys. Hope that you enjoyed today, and I'm looking forward to see you all again over the next couple of days. Thank you.